This is the poetry reading and roundtable edition of People and Their Poems, hosted by Sandy Lee Carlson.
All right, welcome everybody to the Orenaug Mountain Publishing and People and Their Poems Poetry Roundtable this afternoon. It's the 2nd of November, 2025, and we've got Sam Gluck here as our featured poet. So we'll start with Sam. He's going to read 4 poems or so, and then we'll go around the table, and whoever wants to read will read.
I've written a whole bunch of new stuff, but before I begin, I'd like to mention that this poetic program is brought to you by Orenaug Mountain Publishing, publishers of Ode by Gluck, which is available on samuelgluckpoet.com or lulu.com or OMP. And kudos to publishers extraordinaire Sandy Carlson and Edward Zitko. And without further ado, I will begin my poetic interview. So this is called Songs of Life. My heart beats to the rhythm of the waves. Sun's rays sparkle in silicon flecks, swirling away between. White clouds fortify like sailing ships in the sky. Sights and sounds from a songbook of life. Rocking and rolling to the motion of the ocean, blown away by the loud warm winds, swaying to the melody of the palms and the evening, sounds of life, echoing the music and songs of life. Moments of time flow into each other like the notes and the strings of my guitar, vibrating the visual soundscape, filling my senses, sights and sounds resonating in my soul, music from the songs of life. That's called Songs of Life. This one is called Flow of Life. Flow of Life is a singer serenading a song, sweet sounds for the air, here now and then soon gone. The Flow of Life is a musical with a cast of many players, echoing in the eternal silence of the cosmic score. The Flow of Life is a perfect rainbow, vibrating and iridescent, shimmering and self-radiant before vanishing into evanescence. The flow of life is a raging river streaming into the timeless ocean, its waves dancing to the rhythm of the moon and current in perpetual motion. The flow of life is a painter mixing and blending colors, steady brush onto a pure blank canvas, projected onto a transparent wall. The flow of life is a fading memory of a dream and youth in the hereafter, leading the living into the afterlife, so souls can know him and reincarnate into the never-ending flow of life. These are still works in progress. I've come to see that until it's printed in print, it's not cast in stone. So this one is called The Way, or The Way of the Wave. I'm not sure. Okay. The Wave. Listen to the sound. Marvel as it moves. Blossom in its wake. Always changing shape. The way of the wave. Rising as it crests. Feeling its full force. Being swept away or drowning under the weight, the way of the wave. Savage in the storm, glorious in its night, peaceful when tranquil, placid, the way of the wave. Endless under sky, reflecting light into my mind, penetrating deeply into my heart, forever will I find that moving to my end as I crash onto the shore, only one is for all of you ladies out there and girls of all ages, for true love. We all want, right? True love. Love to be happy. When I saw you the first time, I knew I could not live without you. It was truly love at first sight. The way you look and your golden glow beckoned me, I could tell that you wanted me to hold you as a first time you met. We both knew this to be the truth, that we were always destined. I love the shape of your body, your curves exactly. Sitting next to me, this as if we were destined to be together. I caress your lovely neck and cherish the sweet sounds you make. When I touch you the right way, you vibrate. At times you are soft, gentle, sweet. Occasionally you cry out, shout, how the confidence is a heartbeat. When we are in safe and move forward, you brought me to my core and stir my soul. When we make love, we are in perfect harmony. As one, we are orgasmic. We reverberate as a symphony. I will love you forever, my most precious one, my soul, and ever true love, my guitar.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for sharing your poems with us. Well, thanks for joining us from Florida, California, and Connecticut. And Hawaii, right? You've traveled the world, you know. How about Roger? You're going next, another world traveler. It's nice to have you here today, Roger.
Well, thank you, Sandy. It's good to be here. So I also have a book that was published by Orenaug Mountain. Thank you very much, Sandy and Ed. It's called Thanks for the Memories. And it's primarily a memoir chapbook. There are some poems in it. And among other things, it talks about how I got into the environmental field and why I think that in these times when everything seems so glum and we're all overwhelmed by global issues, the importance of what a small group of dedicated people can do locally to make a difference. And that's what I do. Among other things, Sandy knows I'm very active in my local land trust, and we've been able to protect over 27,000 acres, and that's just really cool in the Sierras. I live in the Sacramento Valley. But I'm not going to read out of my chapbook today. I have a few new poems I wanted to share. This first one is about fall and winter, and it's written in a Japanese form called tanka. For those that don't know what that is, it's a short form. It's 5 lines, and it's compressed poetry that tells a short story. And so this is a tanka sequence, it's called, that starts in the fall and goes into winter. And these tankas are untitled, which is normal. Descending deeper into the ravine, soothing sound of cascading creek, cool air invigorates as I carefully navigate the slippery path. A curtain of darkness hangs before a ball of fire bursts over Blackened Bluff. Between darkness and dawn, a magical hour of twilight. Migrating swans have arrived, raucous community of winter snowbirds resting on flooded rice field, then ascending in mass in amorphous cloud of black and white. First wintry wind, chill in the air, warmed by crackling campfire, swirl of clouds overhead. Rhythmic flapping of wings, owl flies on moonless night, silently swoops, snagging a deer mouse, cold night air trembles. Half moon shines through twisted branches, wind whooshes, wind chimes, chilly blanket of dampness. Thanks. So typically a tanka has a nature focus to it, and these did. Um, I like them more than haiku because you can tell a little bit more in a tanka than you can in a haiku. Um, but the second poem is just a free verse poem called "Stillness of Night." It's one of those insomnia nights, lying in bed looking up. Moonlight shines through skylight, room very still. Welcome relief after a too busy day. I walk into the kitchen to get a drink. Aquarium light casts a pale glow, rhythmic ticking of cuckoo clock. Look out living room window, house front lights illuminate street. Not a soul outside, but beyond suburban streets, animals come to life at night. Walking into Black Swan Lake Preserve late afternoon, ducks, geese, swans on the water. But I am here for the nightlife. We set up mist nets to catch bats, sitting quietly waiting for nightfall. Nocturnal animals begin to stir. Raccoons, skunks, foxes, possums, owls hooting overhead. Our patience finally rewarded, bat caught in net for our examination. Daytime in the city, noisy cars speeding down the street, crazy drivers in a hurry passing over double line, social media madness, crazy conspiracy theories. So easy to get caught in that net. I get anxious in this frenzy when my personal space is violated. Tired of the inane chatter, petty concerns, desperately seek some peace. Perhaps this is why I saunter alone in the woods and prefer the stillness of night. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. That was great. Hey, what were you testing the bats for?
I was helping out. It was a volunteer project. We were catching bats just to see what bats were in the area and weighing them and markings, and it was just I think I do a lot of that kind of work. It was just helping out some biologists on a project, and it was a lot of fun.
Cool. There's a lot of that kind of volunteer work available around here too, and it's amazing what you can get your hands on, and like science is on some levels it's doable for an English major like me who thought, ooh, math, it's exciting to see that you can actually make a contribution wherever you are in life. Yeah.
And I talk about that in my chapbook, that there's all kinds of opportunities. I was environmental scientist for 40 years, and so I come at it from a different perspective. But among other things, we do stream monitoring, and I train people all the time to do that. I work with university researchers on field projects. But there's all kinds of there's work with land trusts, there's watershed monitoring agencies. A lot of government agencies, notwithstanding the current shutdown, are anxious to have volunteers help them on a variety of projects. So there's no shortage of things to do. And my guess is if you don't know this, there's probably local groups that are doing cool stuff that would be happy to have you and train you to do it if you're interested.
How do you catch bats?
It's a very fine mist net that you put across an opening where you would expect bats to fly at night. And they use sonar obviously to navigate, but it's a very fine mesh, and so their claws get caught in the net, and you can pick them out and then do a variety of measurements. No, I've done a lot of that type of work. I think Sandy knows I was working with researchers in Mexico. We were trapping ocelots and doing similar things. We were tranquilizing them and measuring them and, looking at their ranges and a variety of things. So, but that's more scientific, but there's all kinds of other general work that people can learn to do. Even simple things like I was involved in a high mountain project, a riparian meadow, where we were restoring the meadow to its proper function. And so about 12 of us got together and we built beaver analog dams with cottonwood trees, and basically, simulated how a beaver might put a dam in a stream, and that slowed the water down, so it allowed it to soak into the meadow rather than run further downstream. So yeah, there's all kinds of, and I talk a lot about that in my chapbook, but there's all kinds of opportunities like that. And instead of getting bummed out by all the stuff that's happening, I try to stay focused on things that I have control over and things I can do locally that I think make a difference and that make a contribution and hopefully leave a legacy. That's my goal.
I wanted to say I liked your transition between nets for bats and then you're in a net.
Yes. Meaning the internet. Yes, you can get caught up in the internet very easily.
Right.
So it's one of those things you've got to set boundaries so you don't get caught in the net.
Yeah, Roger's memoir is, well, for me, it's very interesting as somebody who's in her late 50s trying to see Act 2 as being more involved in removing invasive species, helping the beavers out around here. But to look at a perspective from the early days of the environmental movement and kind of the Wild West before there were safety precautions for you guys doing that stuff. I mean, we're always building the plane we're trying to fly, right? I mean, it's always required a lot of courage and willpower, to break that ground. So it's an incredible story.
Yeah, Sandy was saying when I first got into the field in the late 70s and early 80s, that was kind of the beginning of the hazardous waste world. And back then, nobody knew much about sampling at hazardous waste sites and cleanup and all that. And here we were, in many cases, not properly protected for the hazards and not really knowing what we were doing. And I look back on those times and go, Jesus Christ, we were so damn lucky no one got hurt. Because we did some really stupid things in hindsight. But yeah, it was the Wild West days, and there were a lot of things that were done in the 40s and 50s and 60s that really screwed up the environment that we ended up having to go and fix during my career. So yeah, it was kind of the late 70s was kind of the beginning of the environmental movement. And I was fortunate enough to get into that field in the very beginning and kind of grew up with it. So yes, as Sandy was saying, that's all true.
Thanks, Roger. Isabell, why don't we move to you while we're in California right now?
Okay. This I just found a point that I wrote a while ago that has something to do with my environment when I was growing up. And I wrote this actually a couple of years ago, and it's called Saddle and Paddle. In autumn, when lakes lose their heat, I can't think of a lake that had any heat to begin with, except Saddle and Paddle. And that was really only a pond. I learned to swim in it. First to the stump that was just underwater, so you had to be able to swim a little bit to make sure you could make it that far and find the stump. Cling to it while you caught your breath, and then dog paddle back to the sandy shore. No leafy, muddy shore to have to muck through. This was South Carolina. Lots of sand. Not beach sand, though. A little farther along in the learning to swim process was swimming out to the raft. A green marine painted wood structure floating on two 50-gallon drums, from which I learned to front dive and back dive. You were accepted as a big kid then, when you could swim to the float, climb up and hang out with the other big kids. A totally different aquatic society class. In autumn, when lakes lose their heat, I go east to the ocean. So now it's west to the ocean because I've moved a little further inland.
Boy, I remember those days when my mom would take me to the lake and it was the high school kids that made it to the float And the culture you're describing, the more sophisticated girls in their bikinis lounging, it was never me.
And the absence of adults.
Well, yeah, girls weren't wearing bikinis in those days. You're a lot younger than I am, Sandy, but anyway. So can I read one more, a prose poem? Because this is like, I think it's the first prose poem I've ever written. And I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think. Okay, it's not that long. To my teacher. I have a coffee mug for an A+ teacher that was given to me by an ESL student from the Dominican Republic. I was touched by the gift. I don't know that they have a great apple harvest in DR that might have prompted an apple instead, maybe a mango. Having just moved and come face to mouth with my A+ coffee mug and receiving the monthly prompt from you, Sue, I started thinking about how we grade our students. A+ is the best. Teaching ESL is not like being in grade school, however. I didn't give grades. I did have to write evaluations, and the students had to test to know if they would move on to the next level or stay where they were. And I began thinking about grading and judging and labeling, and it suddenly occurred to me that students are judging and grading us too. And I just heard an interview with an English professor at a state college whose students were asked to give 3 adjectives for their teacher, and they came up with passionate, knowledgeable, and boring. And I wince to think of what some of my students might have said about me, and I am grateful for my A+ mug. Continuing my thoughts on teachers and students, I wonder if Sue is trying to teach us something and gives us pushy prompts to pick our brains and to see what comes out. Do you drink coffee, Sue? All right.
Thanks, Isabell. That's great.
Okay. That's enough.
Yeah, that was nice, Isabell. That was a nice prose poem. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know if it's acceptable to, change person, change tenses or direction kind of thing. But anyway,
there are no rules in poetry, and even in nonfiction, creative nonfiction is okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly what happened if the story is better if you make some small changes. So that's I certainly do that.
All right. All right. I guess I'll read now. Ed and I were down in Danbury, Connecticut yesterday, where I grew up, and what was a reality check. We were in what had been a Hilton hotel, and 40 years ago, I was a waitress in one of the restaurants in that hotel. And the reality check was I realized it was almost 40 years, and it's been since converted into micro apartments, maker spaces, and exhibition space. And what's fascinating to me is that this, and also the Union Carbide headquarters where Ed's dad used to work, and he worked in the mailroom for 2 years, that's also being converted into housing and commercial space. And we went there as well to see a bookstore that was phenomenal. And but what's really interesting about it is people are living and occupying these spaces while they're being renovated. So for us, it was a little bit of an archaeological dig to go revisit a point in our past and to see how it was changing and to know what it looked like. It's just really kind of interesting. But I think it's a credit to the city of Danbury that they're figuring out how to provide the housing for their people, and different degrees of housing, very small, very large. It's just recognizing that people need stuff and finding creative ways to use the space that's there. So it's really interesting. But there was an art exhibit. It was an ekphrastic poetry event, and the Poet Laureate of Danbury had invited others to write about the art there. And there was a painting by a man named Larry Morse called October Light at Races Point. And first time I saw it, it made me think of the North Carolina coast. And then I looked up Races Point, which is sort of the northernmost tip of Cape Cod, which is a really dodgy area because of the way the water moves around. It's a lot of tragic folk songs about boats not making it home. But anyway, I was really inspired by it. And this is called October Light at Race Point. Morning sweeps in with the cool rolling tide. The sun sighs light into the morning mist. Waves paint a mirror on the smooth, cool sand. The purpled robes of the sky wrap the sea in the wine-dark mystery of the ages. We would travel with the sun and sea as drops of mist, riding the warm breezes, moving across time and space into dreams. Here we are facing the autumnal glow, alone in the silence and in the night. Seabirds have been here and have flown away. Now we walk the shore and drink up the light. The eternal flame softens in the fall. Walking the shore, we honor time's call. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for being here. And oops, somebody's just joined us.
Sorry I'm late.
That's all right. You got a poem for us? We were just about finishing up, so it'd be nice to include you.
So this is about a cross stitch that my mother did ages ago. And I call it a cross stitch. The pheasant stands erect on ecru-colored linen canvas. Threads of muted, modest colors, green, aqua, brown, gold. Crest seated on her head, mottled markings about the shoulders. Dark banded tail feathers fall in long, straight formation, exceeding the length of her tightly held body. Grasses spread about, gold, brown, green, teal. She looks into the distance, beak held agape. She's saying something, calling out her worries. Each cross stitch perfectly placed. In the bottom corner, initials and date, DFM 361. Two young ones running, crying about in that year, before her mother's cancer came. Each cross stitch perfectly placed.
That is a great story and a great reminder what our mother's art, what the legacy is of that, you know. And I love that she stitched her initials into it in the time. That's so important. All right, so we were just coming around to the end, Susan, so it's great to include you, include your poem. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us, and it was great to see you all. It is always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
This has been People and Their Poems. Glad you could join us. If you'd like to know more about what we do, please visit our website at OrenaugMountainPublishing.com. Check out our poetry anthologies and learn how you can take part in an upcoming collection. Let us help you publish your next book. Once again, this has been People and Their Poems, presented by Orenaug Mountain Publishing. Have a great day.